I think you were there last year when I had that one tournament, right? When I
Yes.
played that one time. Yeah. So that really was the last tournament I played, and that was the first one in 14 years, and you just have to be there for that. But the other thing was you asked about was affecting schoolwork, and as a junior high kid, well, let's just first say that I wasn't the highest scholar in my school. I was pretty much, as long as I was getting B pluses, I was pretty satisfied. So I didn't apply myself in the school as much as I could have, and try to apply myself in the tennis as much as I could, because that was, if I wasn't succeeding in the tennis, that was what was affecting me the most mentally. To me, succeeding or status quo in school was just staying above that 3.0 level. And not to say that's a bad, horrible thing, because not trying to put anybody that can't achieve the 3.0 level, but I had a lot of kids that were just cleaning me up at school, but I didn't mind it too much. I was okay with it. My parents were okay with it, and I just kept pursuing the tennis. Now, in my area, it wasn't really that strong in tennis, which is another reason why I didn't have any tennis players in my school. The local high school had some good players that I would always practice with. But when it got to high school and I finally got my driver's license as a junior, I was a young student, so I didn't get my driver's license until a junior. Then I started commuting to LA, and in Los Angeles is where I had my biggest tennis experience over the next 2 years with my coach Rick, and he basically really turned it on for me mentally. But yeah, I was during that time I was leaving a little early from school, and by the time I was a senior, I was leaving after third period. I was leaving at 10:40 and heading off home, eating lunch, getting to LA at 1, practicing there until about 5 to 6, coming back at about 7 or 8, and then trying to do my homework then. And so it was really tiring, but I did that 4 to 5 days a week, if I recall correctly. And that was the kind of catch up, because I mean, for the sake of the word, I mean, it's all relative, but I was a mediocre junior growing up to then, and I really wanted to turn on into college tennis. So by the time I was a junior, I really turned it up and practiced with the kids that would clean me up in the tournaments. I was now, kind of on their team, so to speak. We were a group of like 6 or 7 guys with the same coach, and so that really changed my confidence level over the years, over the last couple of years, especially the last year.
I know what you're thinking. Why Coach Pablo? And I'm going to tell you why Coach Pablo. Coach Pablo is one of the best, most influential coaches I've been a part of in my whole tennis career. I had the opportunity to be a part of his program for the past 2 years before I moved on to collegiate status. And as I was his student or one of his athletes, I really viewed everything I want out of my personal career. And but before I commit to this job, there's some questions I have to ask him first. The whole process into collegiate sports. Like I know for me personally, that senior year, because I wanted to play collegiate sports, but not being ranked number one in the world and have too many options. Did you find that was a very stressful period for you, or even if you did have collegiate offers, was it kind of stressful trying to decide which school to go to?
Um, I wouldn't say it was stressful. I took the bait of wanting to play in a big pond. I wanted to try and play Division I college, and I don't regret it. In fact, I ended up playing under the tutelage of Peter Smith the first year. I didn't play for him. I went to Fresno State as a redshirt. My private coach ended up being good friends with him, and he kind of let me come. But just to give an example, I ended up ranked 39 or 40, right about 40 in the 8 teams when I graduated. And we also had the number one player at of Southern California at Fresno State. He ended up getting a full ride, of course. I just walked on that first year, and that number one kid was playing number 6. So that's how good that team was. He was the only American or one of 2 Americans in the front lineup, and the rest were from all over Europe. So it was a very tough team, but I learned a lot. And Peter Smith ended up being the same coach that went on to USC and win the championship 4 years in a row with Stevie Johnson, who's now 29 in the world. So he's like the winningest coach over the last several years. And so good coach. I learned a lot from him. But to say it was a stressful thing, I would say it was stressful deciding. I mean, my only other decision was I had an interview with the coach from University of Oregon. There were some other smaller schools that had asked me to play University of Redlands, but I didn't want to play at a small Division III school at the time in Redlands, where they had all the shootings just 2 nights ago, was my hometown. And I kind of wanted to get away too, because that seemed like a cool thing to do. But it was a mistake. I didn't have a really good first year at Fresno State. In fact, it was horrible. So I was gone there after the first year. One of the schools that was stressful. Going from a small Christian school to a big school that was a big party school. Everything revolved around football, and I had a hard time with the first year. Plus, I was really young and very immature for my age. I had just turned 18 just days before school started, and yeah, I was really out of my element.
So when you left Fresno State, did you think you left because of the competition, or did you leave the sport entirely, or did you transfer to another school and continue to play tennis, or what happened after that first year?
Well, that's an interesting story. I came back home, not excited to go back, but I was going back. My coach had advised me to maybe try Fresno City College 1 year and then come back. In terms of the tennis parts, my grades had dropped drastically my first year. I had never dropped in the twos, and I ended up doing very poorly in one particular class because I kept missing days. I kept coming home early on Thursdays and missing class. And so a lot of things were just kind of spiraling down. And the second semester I picked it up a little bit. So then summer came and I decided to go work in LA as a coach and run a tennis camp. And during that time, I met up with some of my friends from the juniors that were playing at UC Riverside. And I already had my apartment set up at Fresno State. I was going back and everything to the school, and I was going to give it another shot. I didn't want to do City College. And literally last second, like probably weeks before, well, not even weeks before, probably a couple weeks before school started, I ended up changing my mind and transferring to UC Riverside, which was a Division II school. They were good the year before, but they'd gone through a coaching change. So they weren't going to be a very strong team. I didn't know that. I just knew they were good the year before. They were top 10 in the country. They were a fairly local school to me, just 25 miles away from my parents' house, whereas Fresno was 4 hours away, which in California it might as well be 100 hours. It was such a last-minute thing that I ended up showing up to UC Riverside the first day of school with no classes. I had to walk into each class that I wanted to and ask the teacher if they had room and have them sign something. I mean, that was kind of stressful, just walking into class. Everybody's already got their books and already taken notes, and I'm sitting through the whole class wondering if I'm going to be able to, have this class or, have to go into the second week trying to find classes. So it was a very stressful transition. But it all seemed to work out, and I kept the sport obviously at that point. And long story short, I went from redshirting at Fresno to there were a couple of guys that would have played 1 and 2 who were All-American tennis players in Division II NCAA, but one ended up ineligible because of grades, and the other one ended up not getting enough money that he wanted, so he sat out that year just kind of selfishly. And I ended up qualifying third, which was a big surprise because I qualified ahead of 4 guys that were ranked well ahead of me in the juniors. So that bumped me up to number 1 as a freshman eligibility sophomore. So that right there was the big start of the changing of my life, both on and off the court.